This demonstration is on brushes, brush making, and then mark making with brushes. So what came first, or what came before the brush? We talked about this. It was the hand. And then why brushes? Well, keep your hands clean. So it's a little bit of, or it's not a little bit, it's a piece of technology making brushes. So one of the things I always do with any art supply is before I get going, I always test like my pencil or my brushes off to the side. And I've kind of overlooked this, but I think that's really important. You are building a relationship with your tools and getting to know them and figuring out what can they do. So here's some brushes here, a round and a flat. And basically it's, you know, hair, animal hair attached to a stick, right? So we're going to make our own brushes today. So I want you to think a little bit outside the box of what could be a brush. We know our hand can be a brush. We know these traditionally as brushes. My favorite, which I'll paint with, a feather on a stick. That can be a brush. Here's the one I made yesterday, which is so silly. I got this ribbon from the 99-cent store, this funny little stick where I've got a handle or a thumb rest. So what you're going to do is go on a bit of a scavenger hunt and look around your house and find things that could be brushes. Now, of course, I misplaced, I had a longer stick, but okay, so here's another bow from the thrift store. So I'm going to attach it to a chopstick. You could use string, you could use tape. I've got some wire. Some of these brushes I get really attached to. They become my favorite mark making tools and I save them. So I like to, if I can, this is kind of tricky with this one, make them in an artful kind of way. It's a little art object. Okay, this does not want to hold. What I really need is a glue gun. I could dip it without the stick, but okay. I'll have to work on this one a little bit more later. All right, so there's the brush. Another favorite one that another student did is a piece of steel wool. It's particularly fabulous with India ink, okay? So I'm going to test all of these out. I'm going to start with a liquidy paint because I think that'll work better for these three objects. And then I'm going to go back to the more traditional paint brushes and show you mark making with them. I'm using a high flow golden acrylic fluid. If you don't have a fluid paint, you can make some by adding water to whatever it is you have, whatever paint you have. Okay. All right, so here's the new one that I made. So the other one I did yesterday, I loved it. I thought this is a great painting, mark making tool. This would make a fabulous background. It could be plants, or it has the feeling of plants, geology. I always see something in what I'm doing. Okay. Yesterday I had one sheet of paper and I realized it wasn't enough. So got that. I can add more marks on it, but I want to try something else with this. So I tapped it down, but what if I drag it? And some of the marks you're going to like and some you're not, which is why I ended up just getting a pad of drawing paper. You know, it isn't about going for necessarily great art right now. Okay, so that's okay, all right? Now I'm going to test out my feather. So for this one, my experience is getting a really crisp feather with a sharp edge is best. And I drag it. First, I'm going to drag that edge through the paint. And then just by tapping, I get sharp, consistent lines. Okay, then I can drag the flat of that feather through that paint. So this is a little bit of printmaking here, which I like to bring into my painting. Okay, there's the feather. Try one other thing. So this is just wiggling it. All right. And with the feather, I usually clean it off or soak it in water right away if it's a good feather and I want to keep it. All right, here's the steel wool, which I don't know how it's going to work with this. It's really good with India ink. Okay, very absorbent. Yeah, and this has already fallen off the stick. Okay. But the steel wool, it's almost like a sponge. It really soaks up that paint and gives a very nice dense line. Okay, so we've done fluid paint. What about thicker paint? So I'm going to use some of this golden. And first, I'm just going to go straight paint, no water. I'm going to use my flat brush. Now, if you want thick, really thick paint, it's called impasto. You don't add any water. And then it's the magic sort of 45-degree angle. You hold your brush down and you just drag. Okay, if I keep dragging, then I get less paint. That's called dry brush. It's a little bit transparent and I can see that texture down below. Okay, now, let's see. Now I'm going to add some water. And I'll be going over all of this again in class, but I'm trying to weave these two things together. Okay, so now I've added some water. If I use the top edge of that brush, I get a crisp line. If I pull down, I get a wider line. Because I've added water, it's a little bit more transparent. And what I want you to do today is, besides making a brush and exploring different marks, your brush is a three-dimensional object. It's got multiple surfaces. So this one's got the top edge, 1, the flat, 2, and then the side. So you're familiarizing yourself with your tools, your equipment. You know, it's no different than a musician or a chef. You have to know what your brushes can do for you. Okay, now I'm going to go to a round brush. So as you're purchasing brushes and experimenting with them, you can kind of think, well, how many surfaces does it have? The round, it's 2, right? I've got the tip and the flat of the brush. Do a little scrubbing here. So now I'm getting into a little bit of a flow, which I hope will happen for you today. If we start in play or just testing things out, it frees you up just to see what your equipment can do. I'm just letting my paint blend right there with some of that black. Now, with the thick paint, you can take the back of your brush, and if I scratch through, that's called sgraffito. You're going to get some texture there. And you know what? I'm going to end with the hand. Why not?